When Lee Harvey Oswald traveled to Mexico City in September of 1963, his actions should have set off every alarm. He went back and forth between the Cuban consulate and the Soviet embassy, demanding a visa that would take him through Havana and on to Moscow. He argued with Cuban officials, left a trail of phone calls wiretapped by the CIA, and even attended gatherings of pro-Castro sympathizers just weeks before President Kennedy was assassinated. Oswald's support for Castro was no secret. In the United States, he had organized a chapter of the Fair Play for Cuba Committee, a group that defended the Cuban dictatorship and attacked Cuban exiles. He handed out leaflets in New Orleans and proudly declared his allegiance to Havana's cause. Yet after Dallas, the Cuban connection was buried. Lyndon Johnson feared that exposing Oswald's ties would force America into war with Cuba, or even the Soviet Union. He insisted on the lone gunman story. The CIA had Oswald under surveillance in Mexico, but produced missing files, false photos, and contradictions. Rather than admit failure, the anomalies were suppressed, and suspicion was shifted onto Cuban exiles, the very victims of communism. The fear of escalation was real. Just a year earlier, the Cuban Missile Crisis had brought the world to the brink of nuclear war. The Soviets promised to remove their missiles, and U.S. reconnaissance showed launchers leaving, but there were no inspections on Cuban soil. Later, Soviet records confirmed that more than 100 tactical nuclear weapons had been deployed and kept secret from the United States. To this day, outside of Moscow's assurances and photographs of missiles on ships, there has never been direct proof that every last weapon left Cuba. This is why Johnson plunged into Vietnam, but never moved against Havana. Vietnam was a conventional war far away, but Cuba was a nuclear tripwire just 90 miles from Florida. So Oswald's ties were ignored, Castro's nuclear shadow remained, and the island has stayed strangely untouchable. And that is why, more than 60 years later, Cuba is still the Cold War's unfinished business.